One of you asked me if there are certain things in astrology that indicate a potential for narcissism. So I did some research, and this video is just for fun for those of you who like astrology. I am not a professional astrologer. So if you are a practicing astrologer and I get anything wrong, or there's anything you'd like to add, please let me know. It's very rare that you're going to be able to run your coworkers' charts unless they trust you enough to give you their birth time, because without the exact time of birth, there's not a lot that you can do. If you live in or they come from a state with an open records law like California, you might be able to get a copy of their birth certificate, but that is creepy stalking behavior that I don't recommend. Another caveat I want to make is that before we do this, there needs to be a clear understanding of what narcissism is and what it isn't. Narcissism is not arrogance, and it certainly isn't confidence. Narcissism is not self-love, quite the opposite. Psychologists will tell you that narcissism belies what is really deep core inner insecurity. Narcissists do not love themselves. I would go so far as to say that they actually pathologically hate themselves. What narcissism is the ego, the mask, the false self, the fake persona, a house of cards, weak camouflage, covering up their self-loathing like a bad cologne. As a result, you're going to get an insecure attachment style, low empathy or variable empathy, poor boundary function, grandiosity, attention-seeking behavior, a need to feed off of the emotions of other people, otherwise known as supply, to affirm significance, and when it's pathological, a psychotic compulsion to put down other people in order to reaffirm a false sense of superiority. The so-called arrogance that people typically associate with narcissism may actually be just a projection of love for the ego, the false self, not the authentic self. Now, all kinds of people in the world genuinely love themselves, their real selves. They just like themselves. It feels good to be them. They just feel good about themselves. Why they feel good about themselves is nobody's fucking business. It could be something in their astrology. It could be that they come from loving homes and healthy families. It could be that they developed self-esteem over time through their accomplishments, or it could just be that they know that they are children of God, loved unconditionally by the Creator. They are aware of their blessings, and they are spiritual people with the humility to express gratitude for God for the blessings that they were born with because they earned them in past lifetimes. Nothing wrong with that. In fact, if more people knew their self-worth, there would be a lot less bullying in the world. Unfortunately, people who genuinely feel good about themselves, especially women, are all too often accused of narcissism by insecure people who hate themselves. That's part of the maddening irrationality of pathological jealousy. You are not allowed to be aware of your own blessings. You have to let other people hand you the blessings you already have. I know. And part of the function of workplace bullying, like all narcissistic abuse, is to get you to hate yourself as much as these people hate themselves, which is, of course, an exercise in futility. That's why they have to eliminate you, because it's never going to work. Psychologists will tell you that most people are a combination of both nature and nurture. The nature component, I believe they call temperament, but I call the astrological chart. Now, some astrologers take a fatalistic attitude that you can see absolutely everything about the person's entire life in the chart. Whether or not that's true, I tend to view the chart as a blueprint with strengths and weaknesses, blessings and challenges, with some wiggle room for evolution, growth, and change, because while I do believe in fate and destiny, we also have free will. A chart is composed of houses, signs, planets, and aspects, which all together form placements, and there is good and bad in all of that. Every sign, house, planet, an aspect has a light and a shadow. People have free will, so they can decide whether they want to be in their light or in their shadow. These placements do not guarantee narcissism. They are just risk factors. So when it comes to narcissism in astrology, there are several things that we can look for, but I've selected basically 3. So the first thing we want to look for is a Sun-Venus conjunction. A conjunction in astrology is one of the aspects. Aspects are the ways that the planets communicate with one another. Some astrologers argue that a conjunction is actually not an aspect because the 2 planets involved in a conjunction are not communicating with each other, but they can influence each other. I like to think of a conjunction like 2 horses waiting in the stalls with their blinders on next to each other. They can't see each other, but they can sense and affect each other's energy. Astrologers differ about the orb. I think a 4-degree difference is fine. And a conjunction is in the same sign, but not necessarily in the same house. So a Sun-Venus conjunction is when the Sun and Venus are right next to each other within a difference of 4 degrees in the same sign. The influence that planets in a conjunction have on each other depends on the planets. So what is your sun? Your sun is your sign. When people ask, what's your sign? And you answer, I'm a Cancer, I'm a Libra, whatever, that's your sun sign. Even people who hate astrology know their sun signs. Your sun is basically your ego. It's your logical, rational, conscious mind. It is how you view yourself and largely how others view you. I like to think that your sun is how you show up in the workplace, but your moon, your emotional self, is how you show up in personal relationships. Now, your Venus is going to tell me your love language. It's the way you love, how you love. So it's your heart. It can also tell me some things about your ideal partner, and it can tell me what you find beautiful and what you like to beautify. We sometimes call the sun a planet in astrology because planet is easier to say than things in the sky, but what it really is one of 2 luminaries, the other being the moon, which means they give light. So whenever the sun is next to something, it's going to light it up. And Venus is beauty. So Sun conjunct Venus people are striking. I mean, this is slap you in your face. Who is that? Beautiful. I really resent the pretty privilege stereotype that all people who are naturally physically beautiful are inherently narcissistic, because the idea is that they get their asses kissed everywhere they go and they use their beauty to get whatever they want because that's what other people would do if they could. There is absolutely nothing wrong with liking the way you look. In fact, if more people genuinely liked the way they look, there would be a lot less bullying in the world. But sometimes we have stereotypes because they are true. Now, Venus, the goddess of love and beauty, is not just physical beauty, she's also charm. These people are very charming, and charm is a word that is also commonly associated with narcissism when it's manipulative. If the sun is ego and Venus is love, then Sun conjunct Venus people are people who love their ego. They are in love with themselves in that very stereotypically narcissistic way. They love the ego, the mask, the false self, the fake persona, but not the authentic self. They are so in love with themselves that they have lost the capacity to love others. The sun in Vedic astrology is actually a malefic. Yes, it gives us light and warmth and is responsible for all life on Earth, but it's so bright you can't even look at it. It can start fires and burn you. So if the sun is right next to Venus, and Venus is the capacity to love, then the sun is not only lighting up Venus, it is actually burning it up. it's destroying it. So sometimes, but not always, a Sun conjunct Venus placement is actually a broken heart, which is what a bully really is. Sun conjunct Venus is the divorce placement. When we see it in a chart, we usually predict divorce. Again, these people may have lost the capacity to love others, and they are so in love with themselves, they don't see why they should. It's like, why would I bother to love you when I'm so busy loving myself? You're here to love me, not the other way around. Sun conjunct Venus people include my narcissistic mother and my last narcissistic boss, both of whom had Sun conjunct Venus in fire signs, which is a double whammy, which we'll get to in a minute. My mother is a Leo and my boss was an Aries, and their Sun-Venus conjunctions were in the 10th and 2nd houses respectively, which can be very narcissistic houses, career and money. In the case of my narcissistic boss, she had Sun conjunct Venus in Aries in the 2nd house, which is a triple threat. That's narcissism on steroids. Basically, that means she was a very beautiful woman who used her physical beauty and narcissistic charm to manipulate other people into giving her money. And she pays for sex. I just want to point that out. Venus in Aries in the 2nd house, she pays for sex. That's why she has to pay herself over $130,000 a year to fund her sex addiction. So the next thing we want to look for when it comes to narcissism in astrology is a Scorpio moon. Scorpions, do not take offense. I did not say Scorpio sun. I did not say Scorpio rising. I said Scorpio moon. The moon in astrology is, again, your emotional self, and it can provide clues about your relationship with your mother. The moon is actually in fall in Scorpio. So every planet has 4 essential dignities: domicile, the sign that it rules; detriment, the opposing sign; exalted, the ideal placement for that planet; and then fall, which is the opposing sign and the worst placement for that planet. The moon is exalted in Taurus, so it is in fall in Scorpio. Why is that? Well, if the moon is your emotional self, you want your emotions to be on an even keel. You don't want to swing between emotional extremes, which can overextend your psyche and cause mental illness. And Taurus is the most stable earth sign. So a moon in Taurus is grounded, which is what you want. Scorpio is a water sign, and water is emotion, and Scorpio is the wateriest of the water signs. So when you take the emotional self and you put it in the most emotional sign, it's just too much emotion. These people kind of have no bottom. They can be emotionally unstable, and they can actually really suffer a lot. There are quite a few artists with Scorpio moons. Of course, I don't know what they are like in person, but clearly that intense emotionality lends itself to the creation of some beautiful art. Again, there is good and bad in everything, and though there are many positive qualities to Scorpio, when Scorpio is dark, it's really dark. Because these people have no emotional bottom, they can go to some really dark places. Water in astrology is also intuition. And Scorpio, being the wateriest water sign, can be remarkably intuitive. They know how to size people up real good. That could make them excellent therapists. It could also make them excellent detectives. I believe that most criminals in prison are Scorpios, and so are most police detectives. When Scorpio is in its shadow, it likes to collect dirt on people for the express purpose of weaponizing it later. Scorpio loves secrets. It's giving dark empath. They abuse their intuition in order to use that knowledge against people. But because they do that to everyone, they assume everyone does it to them. So they are in this constant game of one-upmanship, and they can't trust anyone, and you can't have relationships without trust. So these people have a lot of problems in personal relationships. I have 2 women in my family with Scorpio moons, and I can say from personal experience that these people are absolutely fucking vile. One of them is a double Scorpio, Scorpio rising with Scorpio moon. And every time she talks to me, it's like this. With this defensive body language and this squint. And I know exactly what she's doing. She's not having a conversation. She's fishing. So the last thing we want to look for is fire signs and fire houses. The fire signs are Aries, Leo, Sag, and the fire houses are 1, 5, 9. Fire signs do not take offense. Again, there's good and bad in everything, and narcissism is not confidence. In Ayurveda, the traditional medicine of India, food also has elements, and it is thought that all disease is born of air and all health arises from fire. So you want to build the fire in the body and eliminate the air. So fire is robust vitality and it's confidence. Fire signs tend to feel good about themselves. They just like themselves. They just feel good. They also tend to be the cheerleaders of the zodiac. They feel good, so they want everyone else to. There's nothing wrong with that. Again, if more people genuinely loved themselves, there would be a lot less bullying in the world. However, when fire signs are in their shadow, that confidence can transition to that very stereotypically narcissistic arrogance and superiority. When it comes to the fire houses, you want to look at what's actually in there. So this could be the sun itself lighting up that house and or a stellium emphasizing that house. A stellium is 3 or more planets all conjunct in the same sign. It's perfectly possible to have your sun in one sign and a stellium in another sign, or your sun could be in that stellium. So the first house is the Aries house. So this is the ego, the me, the I am. This is the exterior of your physical appearance and the first thing that everyone sees the minute you walk into a room. The sun is exalted in Aries and domicile in Leo. So the sun loves to be in Aries or Leo, and it loves to be in the 1st or the 5th. Aries are natural leaders. That's what Aries do. They make decisions, which indecisive Libra, the opposing sign, needs. We need natural leaders in this world. However, when Aries is in its shadow, like my last narcissistic boss, it's a bully. That's what it is. It's just a bully. A bossy, controlling, domineering dictator and petty little tyrant who likes to tell other people what to do. So the 5th house is the Leo house. This would be me. I have Sun Mercury in the 5th. Obviously, all I do is sit here and talk about myself. I was raised by a narcissist, so I caught narc fleas. I can certainly see a lot of narcissistic tendencies in myself, which I spent decades working on to overcome. Delusions of grandeur, attention-seeking behaviors, shockingly low empathy, horrible boundaries. I was never malicious or cruel. I never went on the offensive, but I am vindictive and I do retaliate. I think for a while I was basically a benign narcissist in that I was capable of only talking about myself. So the 5th house is art and creativity. And what else do you create in this life? You create your children. So this is also the house of children. And because it is the house of children, it's also the house of joy because children are inherently joyful. So if you have 5th house placements, I guarantee you, everyone calls you immature. Get used to it. I'm almost 50 and I still get that. I've just resigned myself. No matter how old I get, and hopefully it won't be for much longer, I'm going to hear that for the rest of my life. Leo is one of those signs that everyone loves to hate. It gets a bad rap, like Scorpio and Gemini. Everyone thinks Leos are just these vain, puffed up peacocks. But we need art in this world. People need entertainment and diversion. Being the center of attention is a dirty job, but Leo's got to do it. Every time you watch Netflix or listen to music, you are enjoying Leo fifth house energy. I was raised by a Leo, and again, I have a fifth house sun in Aquarius, the opposing sign, so I actually never have any problem with Leo at all. Because I've been so consistently stalked and harassed and had my boundaries violated, if someone else wants to be the center of attention, it's a relief. Do your thing, girl. You do you, boo. Leo just wants to express. That's what it wants. It wants to crumple it up and throw it over the fence without ever really taking into consideration how it might be received. Again, there is light and shadow in everything. I had an alcoholic Leo boss who was certifiably psychotic, and I had another alcoholic Leo boss who was lovely, weak as they are, but lovely. Leo rules the heart. This is the lion heart, the heart of the lion. And when Leo is healthy, Leo is the ideal parent, not Cancer. Leo, the mother lion. So the ninth house is the Sagittarius house. I know what you're thinking. What could possibly be bad about Sagittarius? The only thing I'll say is that I believe that Sag is the philanderer of the zodiac. Sag is ruled by Jupiter, the Roman name for the Greek god Zeus, the OG philanderer of classical mythology. That man did not discriminate. He was like male, female, human, animal. I'm a mate with this swan. He did not care. Jupiter is multiplicity and expansion, and Sag just wants to experience everything and sometimes everyone. Not all cheaters are narcissists, and not all narcissists cheat, but I think we can all agree that cheating is definitely a narcissistic trait. We also call the ninth house in astrology the house of God. So some people with ninth house placements may have a God complex, as narcissists do. But this is also the house that births great leaders. And again, we need natural leaders in this world. There are a few other things you can look at. You can look at Pluto, which is the god Hades, otherwise known as Satan, the lord of the underworld. Pluto is the planet of death and destruction. You can also look at Neptune. Yes, I know Neptune rules artistic creativity and Pisces, but Neptune is also called the Great Deceiver, another name for Satan, and it rules addiction. You can also look at the nodes. These are Rahu Ketu in Vedic astrology, and in Vedic astrology, they're malefic. Now, what about the most narcissistic sign? I know what you're going to say. You're going to say Scorpio. It's not. Scorpio is an emotional water sign. It's Virgo, the critic, the great critiquer. Virgo is another sign that gets a bad rap as the OCD, anal retentive perfectionist of the zodiac, but there is a need for perfectionism in this world. When Virgo is in its shadow, it turns that attention to detail on other people. Virgo nitpicks. It picks at people's flaws and then uses them to put down other people so Virgo can feel better about himself, and that's what bullying is. So what about the astrology of the bullied? Well, again, narcissists are attracted to a combination of both your strengths and your weaknesses. Sometimes narcissists target people who are just like them because they deem you a worthy adversary. You may have some of these placements too, because wherever we are wounded, we also have the capacity to wound others. Sometimes people bully you because they are afraid of you. Bullying is threat neutralization, like shooting tranquilizers into big game. I have to hurt you before you have a chance to hurt me, which means that you may have some power in your chart that you have not owned, but other people can sense. Power in astrology is going to be very strong Pluto and or Scorpio placements. I have Pluto conjunct my ascendant by only 2 degrees in the first house. On the other hand, the cliche about bullying is that bullies target people they perceive as weak. The key word here is perceive. It's a perception. All abusers are, by definition, weak, lazy cowards, and they like a nice, soft, easy target. They pick off the wounded animal at the edge of the herd. Narcs are sharks who can smell blood in the water, and they can only infiltrate you through your pre-existing insecurities. Another cliche about bullying is that people bully you because they know that you won't fight back. If you are a target of workplace bullying and you don't fight back, don't beat yourself up about it. You really can't. These people really have our hands tied. Any sign can get bullied for any reason. Aquarius gets bullied for being weird. Scorpio gets bullied because people are intimidated by them, but I'm pretty sure the most bullied sign is Pisces. Often the Pisces child is brought into the family to form a bond because the parents are about to divorce and the universe really needs them to stay together for this lifetime, the afterlife, or another lifetime. The Pisces child can appear weak and helpless, like it can't survive. So the parents come together in a united front, like, what are we going to do about our problem child? Pisces rules all things hidden, invisible, and unseen. So people with strong Pisces placements may look like they don't show up. Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac and tends to be the most spiritual. Just as Virgo on the purity axis is disgusted by physical filth, Pisces is disgusted by spiritual filth, and it really doesn't want to get its hands dirty. So this may appear as though you have no fight. Your fight in astrology is your Mars. So another reason you get bullied may be that your Mars is seriously debilitated. Mars is in fall in Cancer. It's really not great in Pisces either. That's kind of like doing water aerobics, or it could be negatively aspected by other malefics like Saturn. My Mars is buried in my 4th house. It's opposite my Saturn and square my Pluto. And I'm a triple Pisces in the 6th house, the house of coworkers. So any astrologer worth her salt, the minute she opened my chart, would immediately see not only mommy issues, but also workplace bullying. I hope that helps. Take care.